All right, this is a quick video on what is a function, what is not a function. So a function is something that you can write as f of x equals and something and something and something happen to the x. Okay, so it could be something as simple as f of x equals x plus 1, or it could be something like f of x equals x squared minus 3x plus 2. Or it could be some tricky operation that we haven't even learned yet, like log x minus the square root of x. Okay, it's just something that happens to x, so it's an operation to x. Now, one thing you'll notice is that when you work out a function, it's only going to give you one y value. Let's do the simple example of x plus 1. We have our x, we have our f of x. If I plug in 6, it gives me 7. If I plug in 5, it gives me 6. If I plug in 2, it gives me 3. If I plug in 9, it gives me 10. Now, let's say I plug in 9 a second time, just to be sure, but this time I plug in 9 and it gives me 36, then this is not behaving in a function-y kind of way. In fact, you can't write it as a function where x is here because somehow x is giving you two different y values. So a function is something where, let me write this definition. A function is a rule where every x value can only make a single y value. In other words, let me state the converse of this. If an x value produces two or more different y values, that means it is not a function. So let's see what this looks like in a table. We've got x, we've got y. So x values are going to be something like, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8. And let's say this is 9, 11, 2, 6, 5. So this is a function because 2 only produces 9, 3 only produces 11. Now if I duplicate one of these x values, if I write 7 a second time, but this time give it an inconsistent result, like 7 gave me 6, but now 7 is going to give me 34, this would not be a function. So the thing to pay attention to, the first thing to pay attention to is this. Repeated x values mean that it is not a function. Okay, so if those x values repeat and give you different y values, then it is not a function. Now, the second thing to look at is what this would look like graphically. So if you graph this, you got your x's and your y's. Let's say this is 3, 5, 3, 7, 2, 4, 6, 8, something like that. If you graph these points, 3 gives you 5, that's that one. 3 also gives you 7, that's that one. 2 gives you 4, 6 gives you 8. These ones are fine, but you can see this inconsistency right there. And a vertical line will show that inconsistency because that 3 produces two different outputs. So on a graph, you have something called the vertical line test. So if you have an equation that looks like this, right, some weird shape, then this would not be a function because a single x value, let's say 7, might produce two different y values. Okay, you can have some really nice graphs and some really nice shapes, but you just cannot express them as y equals something with x. You'd have to find some tricky way of like yx is equal to x squared over y or something like that with the x's and the y's on both sides. Okay, so examples, answer these questions. Is this a function? Answer that is yes. What about this? Function, yep, but now, no, that little loop-de-loop, that messes it up, and a vertical line is going to cross there in 2 points. So as long as a vertical line touches in only 1 point, it is a function. One of them that you're going to see a lot is this one. It's going to look like this, and this one is not a function because it touches at 2 points. Okay, now just when you think you know everything about functions, I'm going to maybe confuse you and then unconfuse you. Let's say you have something like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is 7, 7, 7, 7. Is this a function? And at first you're probably thinking, no way, this can't be a function. I've got this repeated y value. But remember the definition. A function is a rule where the x can produce only one y value. And when I graph this, what it's going to look like is this. 1 gives me 7, 2 gives me 7, 3 gives me 7, 4 gives me 7. If I connect those dots like this, I'm not going to have any issues with the vertical line test. In other words, this is a very consistent function. No matter what I put in, I always get a 7 out. Let me show you what something that would not be a function would be like. If I put in a 4 just one more time just to check, this time 4 gave me 21, well then that isn't a function because that point now violates the vertical line test. So in summary, repeated x values is bad. That makes it not a function. Repeated y values, we don't have a problem with those. Okay, that's everything on whether something is or isn't a function.